Welcome once again to Masterclass in Biology, MVQ series, and we will be discussing photosynthesis in higher plants. Now, this is a very elegant chapter. It is a beautiful chapter in plant physiology. This is one of my pain points actually, that why more questions are not asked in NEET entrance exam from this chapter in plant physiology. This is a beautiful chapter. Now, what we are going to do is that this time we will be going rather slowly, and we will try to understand the basic concepts behind the process of photosynthesis. So rather than hurrying into the questions, rather than hurrying into the possible answer, what I have seen that students struggle with the basic concepts that are involved in photosynthesis. So we will look at the elementary basic concepts and we will try to get clarity on this thing. Obviously, we will be limited in our discussion. We can go at length in the full course, but here again the idea would be to get the basic things absolutely clear. Now, there is masterclass in biology. There is a section which is called as understanding NCERT. It has large number of questions that are based on the text matter that is given in your NCERT textbook. All those are MVQs. They are actually MVQs, and you can actually listen to the audio solutions. But please get yourself absolutely clear about the basic concept. So I will try to be precise as much as possible, but we will try to understand the basic processes. I hope I have told you that what we are going to do in this video, and obviously this is how we experiment. This is you cannot treat every chapter equally because of my experience with students. I know where the students actually struggle, and we may have to modify our discussion a little bit. Now this look at this word first, which is photosynthesis. Now, what exactly is happening here? So what is happening here is that the light energy is getting transformed or converted into chemical energy. Point number one. Now just take a breather and think about it. So we are saying that the light energy is being converted into chemical energy through this process of photosynthesis. Now, which organisms carry out photosynthesis? So we know that green plants. When I say green plants, I actually mean that, please remember this thing very clearly. Green means all the green parts of the plant will be carrying out photosynthesis. So it is not only the leaves. So we are saying plants carry out photosynthesis. Even the insectivorous plants, they are also carrying out photosynthesis because they are growing in oligotrophic soil, and in oligotrophic soil there may be some nutrient depletion, and the nutrient that becomes very early limiting in the soils would be nitrogen. It is very difficult to fix nitrogen. You know about nitrogen cycle as well, and therefore to overcome that deficiency they become insectivores, but this is not replacing photosynthesis. Now, please understand this very important thing. Obviously, it will be carried out by algae, it will be carried out by some bacteria. So we are looking at the unicellular organisms as well, and it will be carried out by some protists as well. So this is where the photosynthesis is actually taking place. And can you imagine the sunlight that is reaching the earth right now must have started the journey from the sun a long time back. This is how we are fixing it. If you look at the fossil fuels that are present inside the earth, they have been formed many years back. So you are actually looking at the history and now utilizing those things. But unfortunately, you are utilizing fossil fuels at a very rapid phase. And in ecology, we will understand that this anthropogenic action is bringing about some disturbances in the nature's carbon cycle, maybe contributing to the global warming, etc. And now this is something that you need to keep in mind as well. Now, so this is photosynthesis. So we know what exactly is photosynthesis, and light energy, again I am saying, is getting converted into chemical energy, and this is done by autotrophs. And photosynthetic organisms would be called as photoautotrophs. So this is a term and we are saying that they can synthesize their own food, and they are doing with the help of light energy, and that is why they are called as photoautotrophs. They will be ultimately the source of energy for the other group of organisms which actually cannot make their own food and therefore depend on other organisms, the consumption of the other organisms. Think of herbivory as predation as well. Remember your evolution chapter, organism and population, and is driving this life, heterotrophs. And please remember that there is a very important byproduct of photosynthesis, and that byproduct of photosynthesis would be called as oxygen, and the oxygen that you see in the atmosphere actually comes from this process. And again, you can understand the life is not possible for these heterotrophs without the byproduct of photosynthesis as well. So this is the importance of photosynthesis, and it actually fixes inorganic carbon, the carbon dioxide, and fixes it into the form of an organic carbon, say for example glucose. So though glucose is not the direct thing that is produced during photosynthesis, we will see what exactly is produced during carbon fixation in the process of photosynthesis. I hope this thing is now absolutely clear. Now, so we know that what are autotrophs, we know what are photoautotrophs, we know that some of them will be releasing oxygen. This is called as oxygenic photosynthesis. Some bacteria will actually not be releasing oxygen but still carrying out photosynthesis. That would be called as anoxygenic photosynthesis. Whenever I get the opportunity to discuss in detail, we will look at the bacterial photosynthesis as well, but now we are sticking to the basic concepts here regarding the photosynthesis in higher plants, which is the name of your chapter. So the name of the chapter is photosynthesis in higher plants. So we will talk about bacterial photosynthesis sometimes else. Now, where exactly in the green plants, in the cells, what is the organelle that is involved? The answer is chloroplast. How do you explain the presence of chloroplast in a eukaryotic cell? So we already know that chloroplast and mitochondria, that their presence in the eukaryotic cell would be with the help of what is called as an endosymbiont theory. So we already know that plasma membrane is very, very dynamic structure. So there may be organized organelles, say for example in eukaryotic cell, but these processes can be carried out by the bacterial cells, and the pigments and the enzymes etc. that are involved in these processes in the eukaryotic cells are actually located on the cell membrane in foldings. So if you remember chapter 8, the cell, the unit of life, you must be now recollecting the name of mesosomes and chromatophores. So plasma membrane is not simply a partition, it is a fairly dynamic structure that actually surrounds the cell and carries out a lot of functions as well. I hope this thing is now again absolutely clear. Now, if we look at the chloroplast, so at the MVQ level, we are skipping some of the details and trying to keep ourselves to the basic concepts, and we are saying that it is a double membrane bound organelle. So it is a double membrane bound organelle. Needless to say, this one would be called as the outer membrane, this is called as the inner membrane, and there is a system of internal membranes as well. So there is a system of internal membranes as well, and these sac-like structures, they are called as thylakoids, and you can see this is the inner thylakoid space and it is bounded by this membrane. This membrane is the thylakoid membrane and this is the thylakoid space. Outside the thylakoid space, you see what is called as the stroma. So please remember, this is the stroma, inside it is the thylakoid space, and this is the system of internal membrane. So these are some very basic essential. At some places what you will see that these thylakoids may get stacked. They are placed upon one another, and this stack would be called as a granum, and obviously the plural would be called as grana. And the various thylakoids in the grana may be attached with the help of what are called as the stroma lamellae. So this is a stroma lamellae, and we know that this portion is called as stroma. Now please remember, the light reaction, the pigment molecules etc., they are located on the thylakoid membrane. So this is the special separation of the two phases of the photosynthesis, and the light independent reaction enzymes, they are actually located in the stroma of the chloroplast. This becomes an important question. This is the organelle which the green plant cells possess and is involved in what is called as photophosphorylation and fixing of carbon as well. So two very important things that are carried out by chloroplast. This is where the thing actually is happening, and now you can understand the difference between thylakoid and stroma and what is the question that can be actually asked here. Now let us talk about, we are talking about again and again we are talking about light energy. So we will think about this, what exactly does it mean. So we know that actually light, the electromagnetic radiation is actually pretty wide. So there can be the wavelength in nanometers. It may go up to the wavelength may go up to kilometers in the case of radio waves. So it is a very, very broad spectrum. Now what actually happens is that majority of them doesn't pass through the atmosphere that is present between the sun and us. So sun actually throws all type of electromagnetic radiation, but not everything is reaching you. What is reaching you is a very, very small portion, and this small portion is actually called as the photosynthetic active radiation. And we will stick to the NCRT. This would be 400 to 700 nanometer. This would be the wavelength, and please try to remember that this is the visible part of the electromagnetic spectrum, and this is what you can actually see. These are the colors that you can actually see. You cannot see the ultraviolet, etc., and you cannot see the infrared as well. And this is the light actually that carries out the photosynthesis largely. So largely the photosynthesis is derived by is actually done with the help of this photosynthetic active radiation, which is 400 nanometer to 700 nanometer. Now the lower the wavelength, more will be the energy that would be present in the energy packets, if you can say, which is called as photons. So photons that are present in the wavelength of the light, which has a lesser wavelength, will have a higher energy. So if you are looking at the violet and violet blue end of the spectrum, these photons will be having higher energy. If you are looking at the red end of the spectrum, they will be carrying lesser energy when compared to the photons which are present in the light of wavelength near violet and blue end of the spectrum. I hope this thing is now absolutely clear. Now what happens is that there would be what happens is that if the light falls on something, what can happen? So light can be actually absorbed, it can be reflected, or it can be transmitted. So these are the three things that we are looking that are possible when light falls on something. And if this something is capable of absorption of the light, then it will be called as a pigment. So pigment are those things which are actually capable of absorbing the light. And I hope you can understand what exactly is a pigment now. And therefore we will have photosynthetic pigment. After all, the energy is present in the sunlight and we have to absorb this energy. Now what happens is that these pigments, you know that the main photosynthetic pigment would be called as chlorophyll A. And this is what we are saying, these pigments that are capable of capturing the energy that is present in the photons in the different wavelength of photosynthetically active radiation, they are located on the thylakoid membrane. So this is what is called as chlorophyll A. Similarly, there would be, this is the main one, and you have the accessory things which are called as chlorophyll B, and you also have carotenoids. So I hope now you understand the flow of information that is given in your NCRT, that this is where these things are actually present. So they are present, these are the pigments that are located on the thylakoid membrane, and some of them are actually called as the accessory pigments, the chlorophyll B and the carotenoids. And what is important to understand is that a particular pigment will be able to absorb light most efficiently in a particular wavelength, and therefore it will have an absorption spectrum. Now this thing is now getting absolutely clear what exactly is absorption spectrum, and the absorption spectrum will be different from for the different pigment molecules, because they have some different properties. We will see that these pigments are organized into photosystem, and there are some proteins also associated, but we will later on see what exactly it is. The basic concept is that a pigment absorbs light, and it absorbs light in a particular wavelength, and that gives a characteristic absorption spectrum of the particular pigment molecule. So if you look at chlorophyll A, chlorophyll B and carotenoids, there is a very important graph in your NCERT that becomes an MVQ, and if you look at that, then you can see that the absorption spectrum would be higher in blue and red light for chlorophyll A. So these are the two wavelengths where it is actually absorbing most of the light energy. And what you will note in that diagram is that the absorption spectrum of chlorophyll B is towards the inside, towards the center. So somewhere here you will see the green light. Why leaves actually appear green? Because these photosynthetic pigments will be absorbing in blue, violet as well as in the red side, and will be reflecting or transmitting both the processes, reflecting or transmitting the green light. That is why these plant actually appears green in color. That is the reason, and that is the wavelength actually will be least effective for plant, because it is not being absorbed at all. And this is something very, very important to understand. And when you look at the carotenoids, they are also still more on the inside. So what does it tell you, that graph? If you are having NCERT, please keep an eye on that diagram, so you can understand, yes, the main photosynthetic pigment is chlorophyll A, but it is helped with the accessory pigments chlorophyll B as well as carotenoid. What exactly is the function? This is a most important question. This becomes a most valuable question. So they are able to trap the light that has not been able to be trapped by the chlorophyll A molecule. So there is a lot of energy present, and some of them is not being harnessed by chlorophyll A. So what happens is that the energy in this particular wavelength of the light is tried to be harnessed by the accessory pigment molecules, and probably more importantly, they will actually protect the chlorophyll A, the main photosynthetic pigment molecule, from the damage because of the photooxidation, because of the energy present in these photons. So this is something very, very important to understand. I hope you now get an idea. And then what happens is that there is a term which is called as an action spectrum. So what is exactly action spectrum? So you split the light and you see that which frequency, which wavelength of the light actually works best for the photosynthesis, and you get the rate of photosynthesis, the rate of a process. It is normally photosynthesis in our discussion in this chapter, but it can be anything, and you get what is called as an action spectrum for the particular process. And because in very early stages there was no mechanism to actually measure the how can you actually measure the rate of photosynthesis? Either the consumption of carbon dioxide or evolution of oxygen. This would be the best way to actually measure photosynthesis. Obviously the oxygenetic photosynthesis that I am talking about. And once you did not have what are called as the spectrophotometers and the chromatographs, it was very difficult to actually measure the volumes of the, say for example, oxygen evolved. So T.W. Engelmann did something absolutely magnificent. So he kept a filamentous green algae on a slide, and actually what happened is that he passed the light through prism, and this was actually, you can understand, was scattered into its different wavelengths, and he added aerobic bacteria. He was absolutely sure that if oxygen is evolved in photosynthesis, and we can measure the rate of photosynthesis by the rate of evolution of oxygen, the aerobic chemotactic bacteria are likely to get accumulated in the region where most oxygen is being evolved, and that would be the region where the wavelengths are most effective in driving the process of photosynthesis. And if you look closely at the diagram, you will see something something like this. So I am it's not going outside the slide. So let us make the slide broader. It will be going something like this, and you get an absorption spectrum. And this absorption spectrum is actually much broader. Than the action spectrum of the chlorophyll A molecule. Look at this diagram given in your NCERT textbook. Look at the absorption spectrum of chlorophyll A and look at the action spectrum of photosynthesis. Immediately you can see that it is much broader. But the accumulation of these bacteria, if you make an outline of this, so look at any slide, any photograph that is given in internet on T.W. Engelmann experiment, and if you can see the dots that signify the bacteria getting accumulated, and you make an outline, then you will see a remarkable similarity with the action spectrum of the photosynthesis. And that is why this is very, very beautiful to understand that T.W. Engelmann, without the availability of the sophisticated technologies, was able to understand about the first action spectrum of the photosynthesis. Now we know, because it is broader than the absorption spectrum of the chlorophyll A molecule, we know there must be some accessory pigment molecules which are involved. So I hope this part is now absolutely clear. We will come back to the photosynthetic pigments. So there is a direct factual question. Factual question. So chlorophyll A will have a tetrapyrrole ring. There will be magnesium in the center. This tetrapyrrole ring will be containing nitrogen. Look at the structure of chlorophyll molecule, and in A, where there is written X, you will write the methyl group, and in chlorophyll B, this X would be an aldehyde. So this X would be an aldehyde. This is an important actually question that can be asked in your NEET entrance examination. So we will come back to the organization. First, let us go back to one more very, very basic thing. So if we know exactly what is happening is that 6CO2 plus 12H2O. So, and this in the presence of light energy. So I will write here light energy. This will produce C6H12O6. So obviously we are assuming that glucose is being produced. Actually, it is not glucose. It is a 3-carbon molecule which is called as G3P. That will be the direct result or the product of the Calvin cycle. We will see in the second part of the video. But for the sake of simplicity, we are taking it as a glucose molecule. Remember, it is not a reverse of photosynthesis of respiration. So respiration is not a reverse of photosynthesis. Though these are the molecules that are present in the both pathways, does not mean that it is actually simply a reversal of the steps in the respiration that will lead to photosynthesis or vice versa. This is a big misconception. This must not be followed. And obviously we will see that water molecule is being used as well as being produced, and this becomes the equation of photosynthesis. So this is the equation of photosynthesis. Now if we try to simplify it, just try to understand the concept here. If I am trying to simplify it here, so let me consider only the net use of the water. So we are saying that 12 molecules of water are used, 6 are produced. So what I am saying that let me simplify the equation and let me use only and only the molecules that are net used of water molecules. So what does it become? So it becomes CO2 plus 6CO2 plus 6H2O plus light energy. So we are using 6 C6H12O6 plus 6O2. Let us say like this. And immediately when I take into account this particular factor, I hope you are following me what I am trying to do. We will discuss it in great detail in the full syllabus, but this is where we are trying to get the basic concept. Immediately you can see that this thing looks like respiration. This is something important. So you neglect light energy and look at this equation and giving rise to this. And this is what we have seen in the cell respiration. But still I am saying that it is not a typically reversal of the things. Yes, in this method you can see that what exactly is happening is a sort of reverse of respiration. So we are trying to understand the relationship between photosynthesis and and respiration, but we are absolutely sure that G3P, which is formed, which is the product of actually Kelvin cycle, and G3P is also present in the glycolysis. If you look at the second half of the glycolysis, it does not mean that if you make glucose by some steps, if from glucose you make G3P and just you reverse the process and make glucose from G3P as well. Yes, you can make glucose from G3P, but it is not the reversal of the step. I hope this thing is now absolutely clear. Now, if we can further simplify the equation, then I can divide this thing by, say, for example, 6. So I get CO2 plus H2O, and we get CH2O plus O2. So this becomes a very simplified equation of the photosynthesis, but it actually creates a problem. And now what is the source of this oxygen? What is the source of this oxygen is carbon dioxide getting split into C and O2. This C joins water, because we know carbohydrates are hydrated carbons, so which means that it forms CH2O and this oxygen is released. So this becomes a very simple and attractive explanation, but this is not true. This is not true. You know that I am talking about a very important MVQ, the experiment by C.B. Van Niel. And when he was doing experiments on the bacteria that were carrying out photosynthesis but were not releasing oxygen and were using hydrogen sulfide. So they were using hydrogen sulfide. So see, here the electrons and the proton, the source would be actually water. In photosynthesis, if we are talking of photosynthesis in higher plants, the source of electron and protons both will be water, but these are some different bacteria. The sulfur bacteria, they are doing a different type of photosynthesis. Yes, they are fixing inorganic carbon into organic carbon. Yes, the energy is being derived from the photons that are present in the light, yet they do not use water here. So they are using hydrogen sulfide, and when they are using hydrogen sulfide, so actually what happens is that they actually accumulate elemental sulfur and do not release oxygen. So that means it is something like this. So CO2 plus, let us say, H2S, I will write 2 here, and we say that okay, CH2O is formed, and basically 2 sulfur molecules are getting accumulated. This is what is happening. So there must be something different happening here, and therefore C.B. Van Niel hypothesized that it has to be water. And water is actually, the photolysis of the water is actually producing oxygen. It is not coming from the splitting of the carbon dioxide. This was one of the landmark experiments. So please try to remember, this is another very important, this is very important question, C.B. Van Niel, where he says that this oxygen is coming by water. There is photolysis of water during the light reaction, and this actually gives rise to oxygen. I hope this thing is now absolutely clear. And then it was actually proved by the radio tracer type of thing, using a heavier isotope of oxygen, which is 18O. I should write it like this. This is not the correct way of writing it, so I should write it as 18O, and this is a heavier isotope. I hope you understand what does it mean. And later on, after many years, actually with the help of this isotope tracing, it was established that the water that is that the oxygen that is evolved in the photosynthesis in the light reaction actually comes from the splitting of the water and not from carbon dioxide. I hope this thing is now absolutely clear. Finally, after understanding all these things, so that means now we have our equation again. So we have 6 CO2, we have 12 H2O, and this is in the presence of light energy, and this forms, let us say, glucose, C6H12O6 plus 6 O2 and plus 6 water molecules. So that means water is being used and being produced as well. And please remember, we are saying that this water is releasing the oxygen here. So these 12 things are actually coming from the water molecule. This is absolutely clear. Here the water is getting oxidized into oxygen. So please remember, and respiration oxygen was actually the terminal electron acceptor as well as the terminal proton acceptor, and therefore was getting reduced to water. This is something that you must absolutely clear, and obviously this is getting reduced to the sugar, and this is what is happening, and easily you can understand the redox type of things which are happening in the photosystem, in the photosynthesis. I hope this thing is now absolutely clear. So my idea in this video is actually to try to tell you the basic concepts evolved, and as I told you that there is an understanding NCERT section in your master class in biology, and all those questions now can be understood in a better manner if you are absolutely clear about the basic concept. And now let us come to the different phases of the photosynthesis. So one would be called as the light dependent. So this would be called as the light dependent reactions, and the others would be called as the light independent reaction. They can ask you a question that why they are not called as the dark reaction anymore. The reason is that actually it is not happening in the dark. Do you know when there is a very common misconception? When is the photosynthesis happening? When is the respiration happening? Sometimes people are confused whether plant respire or they photosynthesize, or they do both, in the daylight or in the night. This should be, I think all these students who are watching this video, they would not be having a misconception here. There is a big misconception that I have strangely seen in many students about this basic concept. You should be absolutely clear. So one phase would be called as light dependent, the other would be called as light independent. Let me give you an idea. When Blackman was studying the process of the photosynthesis, he saw that at the low light intensity, the rate of photosynthesis can only be increased by increasing the light intensity. And now please try to understand this. At low light intensity, there is only one method of raising the rate of photosynthesis, and that was basically by increasing the light intensity. But soon he saw that when a particular light intensity was pretty soon reached, it became saturated, and you increase now the intensity, it was not reflecting in the rate of in the increased rate of photosynthesis. The other factors actually became limited. Say for example, carbon dioxide, and when he provided carbon dioxide, the rate actually again increased, and then the temperature became limited, and when there was enough carbon dioxide present within physiological limit, when the temperature was increased, the rate can be increased. So immediately Blackman could understand this photosynthesis should be having two phases, one which is dependent on light. Try to remember, at the low light intensity we were able to increase the rate of photosynthesis only by increasing the intensity of light, and then it became saturated. Then came the second thing, and it is basically by temperature, and temperature can affect the enzyme kinetics. So Blackman was absolutely magnificent in this observation that the second phase would be light independent, and because of this temperature thing that I am talking about, it must be an enzyme catalyzed process, and this was a very significant understand. Now we understand that what exactly are the two phases of photosynthesis. One is the light reaction, where actually two things will be happening. There would be the capture of energy that is present in the photons, and then there would be the formation of the reducing power, which is called as NADPH, and obviously some ATP will be synthesized by photophosphorylation, and these are the products of the light reaction which are actually utilized in the light independent phase. And if we are talking about the oxygenic photosynthesis, this is where photolysis of water will be taking place, and it will be evolving oxygen as well, So I hope you can understand that these are the products. This is the reducing power. It incidentally is nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide phosphate. If you remember, NADP, and here it is, we are saying NADPH, NADH and NADPH. Now please remember, they are first cousins. So that means there were the reducing power in respiration. You saw this, it was NADPH NADH, here it is NADPH, and there is slight difference between the two. The working principle is the same. You have already watched the video on cell respiration, so you must be comfortable in this idea as well. And as long as NADPH and ATP are available, this thing can happen. Here actually carbon fixation takes place. So here actually carbon fixation takes place. The inorganic carbon in the form of carbon dioxide gets converted into organic carbon, G3P, and ultimately into glucose, and plant can actually translocate sucrose and actually store starch. This is something beyond the importance here, but this is basically understanding the two phases of the photosynthesis. Now please remember, when I say that as long as these are available, this can go on irrespective of the presence of light or not. But don't you think that this is also expected to happen mostly in the daylight? Because if it is happening in the night, soon these things will be depleted and this cannot go on. And for the replenishment of NADPH and ATP, the light reactions which actually happen in the presence of the light must continue to go on. I hope now this another misconception is now absolutely clear in the mind of the students which are watching this video. And don't you think that this gives me the name photo and synthesis? Now this is beautiful. Now this is easily you can understand that what exactly this word is all about. So there is a part photo means light. So there is something which is light dependent, and then obviously synthesis, this is the carbon fixation, and that is why we get the word which is called as photosynthesis. I hope this thing is now absolutely clear. Now we know the basics about it, and let us look at some of the aspects of the light reaction. Let us see what happens. And we are saying that these pigments are organized into photosystems, and in the photosystems there would be a reaction center. So we are looking at the reaction center, and we are looking at a photosystem, something like this, and this will be located on the thylakoid membrane. So again, I am trying to give you the basic concepts here. Again, I am encouraging you to now attempt the question and hear the audio solutions of understanding NCERT in master class in biology, and now you will be able to understand the thing better. And actually it is very sore point for me that such a beautiful chapter, you can easily see how good these concepts are, how beautiful these concepts are, but it doesn't get a fair representation in the NEET entrance examination, and that actually is a shame. What we are saying is that there is a reaction center. So this reaction center would be made up of chlorophyll. So there will be a pair of chlorophyll A molecules. Now this is the reaction center of a photosystem. Obviously there would be some accessory pigments, something which are present here, and largely they will be chlorophyll B and carotenoids, but mind you, there can be chlorophyll A as well, and more importantly they will be associated with some protein somewhere here as well as here. So all of them are associated with protein, which is actually very, very critical. And within the photosystem there is a primary electron acceptor. And two photosystems have been discovered in green plant. One would be called as, the first one to be discovered was called as PS1, the second is called as PS2, but we will see that in linear or non-cyclic photophosphorylation actually PS2 works first, then PS1. This is again an important question, and this thing will be called as the antenna complex or the light harvesting complex, also called as the antenna complex. And the reaction center of PS1 is called as P700. This is based on the far red light that it preferentially absorbs, and the PS2 is actually called as P680, and again telling you that it is happening in the red spectrum. This is the wavelength that is preferentially absorbed by the reaction center of PS2. I hope this thing is now absolutely clear. What is P700, what is P680? There would be obviously redox reaction, and if they actually give an electron to the primary electron acceptor, it will become 680 plus. That means it becomes oxidized. If it receives an electron, it will be converted back into 680. Similarly here it will become P700 plus and will receive an electron and will actually become P700 again. I hope this thing is now very, very very easily understood. So this is the basic concept of a photosystem. And as I told you that there is a linear flow of electrons, and this is actually called as the non-cyclic, and it is photophosphorylation. We know what is phosphorylation. You have seen the video on cell respiration. Phosphorylation would be phosphorylation of ADP, joining of inorganic phosphate in ADP and leading to the formation of ATP molecule. In the mitochondria, the ATP was synthesized by oxidative phosphorylation. Here the energy will be driven by the photons that are present in the light, and obviously the source of the electron and protons in photosynthesis would be water. This is again a very important question, and these photosystems, they are located in on the thylakoid membrane. And so what I'm going to do is, now this is where actually I will encourage you to see all the questions that are being discussed in the understanding portion of the master class in NCERT. Some very meticulously designed questions have been explained there that will tell you all the possible questions. But please here understand the basic concept. What I am saying is that first to act would be the PS2. So let us make the PS2 and let us make the reaction center and the primary electron acceptor here. So this is now something very easy. This is the thylakoid membrane. This is the thylakoid space. This actually is the stroma. This is easy. Now this is thylakoid space, and we are saying that what is going to happen is that obviously this is also associated with photolysis of water. So this is actually PS2. This is PS2, you know, this would be P680. So the energy is captured by the light harvesting complex. They do not transport electron to one another. So there is a transport of energy. Physically, the electron is not transported. So that means they are not directly taking part in the redox processes. Now what is happening is that the electron actually captures a photon, jumps to the higher energy, falls back, and actually the energy that is released, because this is an exergonic fall, will be going to the other light harvesting complex component, and this is how this energy ultimately reaches the reaction center. And from the reaction center, actually the electron is now jumped, it is ejected, and actually there is a physical transport of this electron to the primary electron acceptor. So there is a physical transport. This is where the charge separation is occurring, and therefore what happens is that when this electron gets sufficient energy and it is transported to the primary electron acceptor. Obviously, when you look at the master class in biology question bank, I will tell you this, what is this primary electron acceptor. That is now a very small issue. Now we are trying to understand what exactly is happening, that this electron actually gets energized and reaches the primary electron acceptor, and therefore this becomes deficient. In the electron, and it actually becomes P680 plus. And somehow what is going to happen is that these electrons have to be replaced, and this is where the photolysis of water actually comes into place. This is where there is photolysis of water. It will lead to the formation of H plus. It will lead to the formation of oxygen. Obviously, when two molecules of water are undergoing complete photolysis, then one molecule of oxygen will be released, 4 protons, 4 electrons, but try to keep the track of the electrons, and these electrons one by one are filling up this gap that has been produced by the ejection of the electron from the reaction center of PS2, and this has been accepted by the primary electron acceptor, which is present within the photosystem too. I hope this thing is now absolutely clear. Now obviously now you have pushed it. This is sort of uphill type of transport, and then everything happens downhill, and you will have a plastoquinone. Now this is where the electron lands, and the similar thing that was happening in the oxidative phosphorylation, there would be a transport of something that is happening here, and what happens is that it transports it to what is called as cytochrome B6F complex. So this is if you remember in mitochondria it was BC1, here it is B6F complex, and this electron actually comes here. The proton, see see, the photolysis of water is happening here, and therefore the proton is released into the stroma, into the thylakoid space, not in the stroma, in the thylakoid space. This is where you want the protons to be accumulated, and one of the transport thing is actually transporting proton here as well from the stroma into the thylakoid space. What was happening in the mitochondria? It was from the matrix into the intermembrane space, this time from the stroma into the thylakoid space, and you are building a proton gradient here, and the pH is getting low, and then it goes to what is called as plastocyanin, and then it reaches what is called as the photosystem 2. And this photosystem 1, this again is actually reaction center. You know, this is P700. Similarly, there will be the antenna complex, and what happens is that this electron is jumped from P700 and it goes to the primary electron acceptor that is present in the within the photosystem 1, and the electron, this hole actually is filled by the electron that is coming from the photosystem 2. So here the hole is filled by electron, here the hole is filled by the electron that is coming from the photosystem 2. But please try to understand, ultimately it is very important to actually fill the hole here, and the source of the electron, the source of the proton again would be water molecule, and it is the water molecule, the splitting of which is actually producing oxygen as well. Just giving you the basic concepts here. And obviously this proton, think of the membrane on the other side. So if I make the membrane complete, so let us make a different diagram so that it should not confuse you. This is the thylakoid membrane. This is where all these things were taking place, and I said that because of the splitting of the water, the proton molecules are actually liberated here, and the proton is also transported into the thylakoid space, and this thing is actually stroma, and obviously there would be ATP synthase. And this is the knob, the catalytic function. And what happens? Again, there is chemiosmosis, and this leads to phosphorylation of ADP, and it leads to the formation of ATP molecule. This is phosphorylation, and this is actually what is called as photophosphorylation. This is the diagram. Now you can understand the diagram that is given in the NCERT. So let us come back to what we were discussing here. So we were discussing here that this thing has reached the photosystem 2. Now in the photosystem 2, so let me just make it slightly smaller so that we are getting some space. And what happens is that from the plastocyanin, it goes to photosystem 1, and then it goes to the primary electron acceptor, and then it goes to ferredoxin. Look at the position of the ferredoxin. Look at where are the various components located on which side, and this plastocyanin would be here. This plastocyanin should ideally be here, and this is the ferredoxin, which is on the outer surface. The plastocyanin is on the inner surface. Remember, this is the thylakoid space, this is the matrix, and then it is transported to the NADP reductase, FNR, and then it leads to the formation of NADPH. So this is the NADPH. Remember, it is formed in the stroma, and look at this place where the couple, because of the coupling of this chemiosmosis, you can easily understand the ATP by the ATP synthase is also formed in the stroma. These are the two products of the light reaction that are required in the stroma for the next phase of the photosynthesis, which is actually fixation of carbon. Now what can happen is that in some cases we will see when during carbon fixation we will understand that there has to be a balance between the production of ATP and NADPH molecule, and if the imbalance has to be reduced, a shortcut can be actually done, and this ferredoxin actually can pass back. It actually can pass back the electrons. It can actually pass back the electron to the B6F complex, and then obviously it will come back from plastocyanin again to the PS1, and this is what is called as the cyclic electron flow. As you can see that if the electron is undergoing cyclic movement here itself, then only ATP will be produced because B6F is involved. Neither NADPH will be produced nor oxygen will be evolved. And this oxygen evolution is with the help of PS2, and only in non-cyclic flow it will actually end up in NADPH. And because the energy, the electrons are ultimately coming from water. Now this is something very important. If the electrons are coming from the water, they are actually having higher energy here. So that means this type of scheme would be called as Z scheme. So this is called as Z scheme, uphill, downhill, and then uphill. So you can understand the NADPH molecule actually are having electrons which are actually having at a higher energy value than that were present in the water molecule. That is why they can be used as reducing power in carbon fixation in the light independent or dark reaction, and that is why it is called as the Z scheme. And this is how the photosystems are organized. Now you can understand between non-cyclic and the cyclic thing, and we can now understand this arrangement can actually be maintained. One of the places where it is happening, your NCERT says, can be the stroma lamellae, the cyclic electron flow, where you actually make adjustment between the production of ATP and NADPH. Mind you, this can be again photoprotective in nature. We know that probably a very, very important function of this cyclic flow can be photoprotective in nature as well. So now we understand the light reaction. Now we know how oxygen is produced. Now we know what are the products that are being produced as a result of the light reaction, and we will be utilizing these products in the fixation of the carbon during the light independent phase of photosynthesis, which is actually called as the Calvin cycle. So very, very important thing that we will look at in the part 2 of this chapter. I hope you have now got some clear idea of the basic concepts given in this chapter.